Hello, everyone. I am Gwenaelle Moncoiffe from the British Oceanographic Data Centre at the National Oceanography Centre in the UK. My talk today is about how to connect essential ocean variables to datasets using the IADOPT ontology and smart mappings. This is still work in progress, and today I will focus mainly on explaining our approach and showing a few examples. My co-authors are Alison and Pamment from the Centre for Environmental Data Analysis in the UK, and Alexandra Kokkinaki, my colleague at BODC. In this presentation, I will also refer to some work done over the last 2 years in the frame of the Research Data Alliance Working Group, IADOPT, and thus I would like to acknowledge the contribution from the working group co-chairs and participating members. I will start by describing the challenge we are trying to address, then explain how we can build on what we already have, before describing our approach in more details, giving a few examples. We need fast, reliable, and reproducible data flows in order to connect data to essential variables in any domain. How can we do that? On one hand, we have essential variables defined by organizations like GOOS, for example, for the ocean. These highlight measurements that need to be focused on in order to help us understand the changes experienced by the planet and predict the resilience of our environment and the possible impacts on people's livelihoods. On the other hand, we have hundreds of repositories and data sources, millions of files, zillions of measurements collected over the last 40 or 50 years, sometimes more, many already held in well-structured and well-managed databases and data files, with standardized metadata schema and control vocabularies, including for variable names. However, despite these standardization efforts, it is not currently possible to establish seamless, reliable, and fast connections between the EOVs and the data. It has undoubtedly been the strength of the atmospheric and oceanographic communities that for many years, standards have been developed and put in place to facilitate data exchange. We have community agreed standards and best practices. We have open source tools, and we have strong international and cross-disciplinary collaborations. We need to value these existing standards and build from what is already in place. Over the past 20 or 30 years, the standardization work done by the climate and forecast and the CDataNet communities, which includes most, if not all, the European National Oceanography data centers of the IOD network, this effort has been exemplary. As part of their metadata standards for data exchange and integration, they have adopted or created control vocabularies for encoding the description of variables held in data files. This gave us the CF standard names collection and the BODC parameter usage vocabulary, which are both live vocabularies managed via the NVS. Our idea is to use the power of linked data to connect these control vocabularies to the EOVs by using the new interoperability framework developed by the RDA IADOPT working group. In order to implement this approach, we need persistent URIs for the participating vocabularies. So for the EOV, we selected the NVS collection A05, which is the Atlantos Essential Variables collection. It was set up in 2016 for the Atlantos project, and its content was aligned with the GOOS EOVs. Then we used the P07 NVS collection for the CF standard names and the P01 collection for the BODC PUV. We also need a vocab server with a Sparkle endpoint, and for this we use the NVS. Then for the decomposition of the variables into atomic components, we used the IADOPT ontology and methodology. Finally, we use the PUV component vocabularies as sources of terms for the atomic components. This is because most of what we needed for the decomposition of the variables are already in the NVS. Once these requirements were fulfilled, we identified 3 steps. The first step is the decomposition of the EOV. Here I will show 3 examples. The first one, EOV oxygen, was decomposed into a property, concentration, an object of interest, oxygen, a matrix, water body, and a constraint, dissolved plus reactive particulate. The second example, EOV sea surface and subsurface temperature, which has been merged into one concept in A05. This variable just needed to be decomposed into two components, a property, temperature, and an object of interest, water body. Then the third example, EOV nutrients, needed to be decomposed into a property, concentration, a list of objects of interest, nitrate, nitrite, phosphate, silicate, nitrate plus nitrite, and a matrix, water body. The second step was to do the same with P07 and P01 terms. Here I show a P07 concept that matches the EOV oxygen on the left, and a similar concept from the P01 collection on the right. This part of the work is still on progress, is still ongoing, and our intention is to express the entire content of P07 and P01 according to the IDOC components. We will be developing rules to do this in a systematic and semi-automated way. The third step is to build the Sparkle query. The query is generic for all EOVs. It takes one or multiple EOV and a target vocabulary. Here we use P07 as input parameters. Then the query is run, and the output is a list of P07 concepts URIs that can then be used as input to a broker to discover datasets. So what is novel in our approach? Up until now, we were using static mappings to connect SCOS concepts with one another. We used this approach for the Atlantos project back in 2016. Examples of these mappings are shown here with SCOS narrow relationship between A05 and P01 or P07 concepts. However, these are very difficult to manage. They are time-consuming and hard to maintain. Also, the logic used to select one term over another is opaque and certainly not explicit. Instead, our present approach creates mappings on the fly based on rules and reasoning. Because they are created dynamically, the maintenance cost is low. Also, the logic is explicit, and the result will be consistent even if new terms are added or existing terms are deprecated. These are what we call smart mappings. If you want to know more about our use of smart mappings, check the poster by Kokkinaki et al. On the Henry Fair Marine Domain EOV demonstrator. Thank you.